Well, service is an attitude, but it also is, it is the spirit in which an action takes place. So, we have on occasion talked about intention. And the intention to serve is an intention which is expressed as our effort to uplift other people in ways that they feel is appropriate to their lives, not ways in which we feel is appropriate to their life. We are extending ourselves, investing our energy in the upliftment of the people around us, and supporting them in the realization of their own, creative effort. And so I would say that service is also an expression of selflessness, meaning, we are making an effort for the benefit of others, which we have no attachment to any return for. And in so doing, what we are nourishing is the experience of contact, alignment, and flow, which is my definition for the term Kundalini Yoga. Of course, it's a much richer I have a much richer definition than that. But essentially, if you want to reduce, all yoga to 3 words, the definition is contact, alignment, and flow. So, our spiritual work brings us to a deep and very much more refined understanding of ourselves as human beings. I frankly think, we are so blessed to have an extremely refined and sophisticated spiritual practice that is, the most direct practice that I have ever seen on the planet. As an expression of this practice, which is our effort to understand ourselves and to understand others, we engage in service as an attitude about how we live our entire lives. Remember that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is the guru of the hero Arjuna. And Krishna is telling Arjuna, going out into battle, don't worry about yourself. Go out there and selflessly engage in the finest effort that you can possibly make, knowing well that in making this effort, you are in connection with and expressing devotion for, the divine, and in that effort, you will always be cared for. And so we go out on the battlefield of our daily lives with the intention to honor our life and life itself. In other words, to nourish our life and to nourish life itself by expressing our value for life in all of its forms, but particularly the human forms that we share our life with. And it's not to say that this is an easy thing to do. It's not easy. If it were easy, everybody would be fully realized. But it is the appropriate attitude to have in approaching our daily lives. And it doesn't matter what our talents have led us to as a profession or a lifestyle. It matters that in that profession or in that lifestyle, we are devoting ourselves to the welfare of others and the cultivation of our own creative energy. We're devoted to learning about ourselves and serving others. So, this service then, carried out over time, becomes an expression of devotion. And remember that the core message in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a text I've been commenting on recently because I was asked to, the core message in the Bhagavad Gita is be devoted to life itself. Be devoted to the divine. Be devoted to the one source, of all phenomena. That devotion, the giving up of ourselves, the releasing of our own, defensive routines, dissolving the shell that we are constantly building, giving up ourselves into the divine, is what releases us from suffering. And in our daily lives, as we walk on the earth, it is an attitude and expression of service, which is the demonstration of that surrender to the divine, and in time it becomes a very, very beautiful, rich, delicious, experience of devotion. This is, sort of the message of the whole of the South Asian, the most refined message of the whole of the South Asian spiritual traditions. For those of us who are really concerned about enriching the quality of our own lives, that richness comes from the experience of contact, alignment, and flow, which we are manifesting in our daily lives as service. Well, doctors, think about health and heal your patients. Don't think about money. Engineers, think about the quality of the work you're doing. Everybody, let's do a good job for ourselves and everybody else at the same time. One thing that, I think we're witnessing, and I've seen other people in the media say this, is the complete breakdown of our societies. We're experiencing, America's in the early stages of that, Venezuela is in the late stages of it, Mexico has seen a complete breakdown in so many of its institutions and social connections. People no longer trust each other. They are incapable of caring about each other. There is this great disconnect. And it's only those people who understand the value and the power of service that are reestablishing those connections, re-enlivening, our institutions, re-expressing higher values, and that's the only hope that humanity has for survival. The biblical notion that God somehow gave man the right to dominate the earth is one of the most immoral ideas that I have ever seen. I should rather say than immoral, unethical notions I have ever seen. How people can imagine that somehow we are different than the earth that we occupy. You know, sort of. I mean, of course, nobody thinks about it. But, you know, I asked the simple question, and you've heard me before say, you know, what would a fish be if there was no ocean? There wouldn't be a fish. You know, the fish is an effect of the life of the ocean. It is an expression of the life of the ocean. In the same way that human beings are an expression of the life of the earth. And whatever the atmosphere is, the environment is, that's what we are. And that's why, in my view, there is a social breakdown and an interpersonal breakdown because the earth is poisoned. The earth is poisoned by pesticides, chemical fertilizers, industrial pollution. The earth is poisoned by nuclear radiation. It's also poisoned by electricity, frankly, and it's poisoned by microwave radiation. You know, these are very, very late, very recent developments in the history of the earth, which are not healthy for it at all. You know, the oceans are poisoned. The oceans are poisoned with our pharmaceuticals, with the, you know, the minute amounts of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone in the rivers is completely undermining, you know, all the ecosystems and the reproductive systems of fish and all the aquatic, you know, creatures, for starters. And then there's all the industrial poisons getting dumped in the rivers. The water's poison. The oceans are, in my lifetime, likely to collapse. The air is poison. We've known that forever, for the entirety of my life. You know, the burning fossil fuels has completely polluted the air. You know, and, you know, burning plastics, well, that's a fossil, made from a fossil fuel. There's so many toxins in the air now. Service to the environment. Respect for the environment and service to care for it is one of the essential responsibilities of human beings who care for, who have any value for any life. And it is amazing to me to see people who call themselves Christians willing to murder physicians who are available to help women deal with their reproductive health and, you know, support them in making their own life choices. But, you know, at the same time, they take no responsibility whatsoever for the quality of the earth, the quality of the environment, and, you know, they take no responsibility for the welfare of their fellow man. You would think that, you know, this one strong position, the right to life, would extend itself through the whole environment if it were real, if it were a conviction that was actually really held. The treatment of animals for the sake of, you know, our cheap food in America is just horrendous. You know, we're lucky that we're not exposed to it very much. You know, the companies keep it as hidden as they can keep it, because any normal person seeing how animals are treated, that, you know, feed animals or our food animals are treated, would be shocked beyond belief. So, the system has been set. There's very little we can do about big parts of the system, but we can, in our own ways, you know, keep our yards clean, make choices about how we handle our transportation, how we keep ourselves warm, how we eat, what our diets are, the quality of the food that we take in, the quality of the food that we share, and we can, think about how to make our connections with our neighbors richer and, more meaningful. Because this is all part of our environment.
Do you feel like service always implies some personal cost, or is service something that can still be, is it still service if it's something that's really fun for you?
Let's, under every circumstance, let's make life fun. One of the big reasons why I live in an ashram all these years is because the core of it is fun. It's fun to have this life with, shared with really interesting, capable, accomplished people who, whom you share some really similar values with. It's fun. So I think, but here's the thing about service, Tashi, that's really important. There's a flow, and a flow never goes all one way. Think of this. We watch videos on Nat Geo of the waterfall, in the summer and the autumn, salmon returning to their rivers, and we marvel at these salmon jumping up these waterfalls, going up these big waterfalls to get back to where they respond. The thing is that only has been known recently is that salmon mostly don't expend nearly the amount of energy going up a waterfalls that we used to think they did, because in every major flow there is also backflow. There are feedback loops within waterfalls, and the salmon ride those feedback loops up to the places where they need to make a jump, and then they jump, and then they find another feedback loop to follow that carries them, and they're very agile in riding the back channels, the eddies within the waterfalls that carry them to the top. And so it's not really nearly as hard as we used to think it was. They're fighting the current, they're very powerful animals anyway, but there's always flow. So service is not like a big self-sacrifice. It is an attitude that will, and an expression which will always have a return to it. And even if the people that we're serving, don't, in some fashion disappoint us with their response, the fact is that there is always inevitably a flow back to us in this service which enriches us and makes us a bigger person. And, most people in their lives, experience disappointment, and out of that disappointment they create a shell. And we are every day adding a little more to that shell until we no longer have the ability to feel anything. That shell, a mental and emotional shell, diverts all incoming experience into the wall that we're building around ourselves, or most of it. Our tradition teaches us that in an authentic reflection upon self goes beyond the mind and all the thoughts to become aware of the feeling in ourselves, and to understand that that feeling is a vibration, very much like a musical note or a chord. That feeling has at its core a resonance which is energy. And so what we are reflecting upon is our own patterns of creative energy, the energy which animates our bodies and our minds and our emotions, that is our life. We are reflecting upon that energy, initially in the practice of contact, alignment, and flow within ourselves, within our mind, aligned with our hearts, aligned with our creative energy, flowing in the energetic mechanism which underlies the body-mind complex, and reflecting upon this dynamic process, this dynamic system, within a dynamic system, within a dynamic system that we are, we start to come to an experience of how significant contact, alignment, and flow are as the core process of our life. And, that recognition, flowers into a complete self-realization. An understanding, an experience of our infinite and eternal union with the divine. So yeah, and service is the way we hold that thought in our daily lives. I get up every morning, I think about love. That automatically brings, a bunch of faces in front of my mind. And, and I acknowledge them. I love them. Not just people who are here now, but also people who were here before and people who are not here in this world anymore. Because if there's only one thing, and that's awareness, then awareness is enduring, and all the people who have gone before us in this world are still here. And it is wonderful to acknowledge, to connect to and acknowledge the larger environment in which we exist, which has been nourished and supported by people whose essence is, is here right now, but whose physical bodies maybe have gone away. So, as we are doing service to others, physical people, as we are dialing up the awareness of love and getting our intention set in our everyday life to do service, we also are connecting to all of those people who have enlivened and enriched the environment in which we are existing today. And at the same time as we are serving the living, we are, communing with, all of the souls of all of the saints who have blessed this life that we have by serving themselves, sometimes in other places completely, other continents and vast other times, but they have enriched our lives, and we are, in the effort that we make to take care of each other and strangers, we are giving back to them as well. Part of the whole process of service is that it reveals to us our own patterns of tension. It reveals to us our wounds. It reveals to us, the dissonance which we hold within, which basically was, I call the disappointments of our ancestors. And it gives us the opportunity to dissolve that dissonance and those tensions simply by feeling into it, breathing into it, flowing through it, and continuing to hold the attitude of service and the awareness of devotion as we move through our daily lives. And, most of us come into the world completely unprepared to deal with feeling. We suppress feeling. there's a point when, I don't know how it is in Venezuela, but I know for sure in America, there's a point in most people's lives in America where we say to ourselves when we're about 16 or 17, I'm never going to let myself be hurt ever again. And after that, we really start pushing down our feelings. Now, if you're a child and you have parents who are really intense and have, in a lot of different ways it can go, maybe there's no opportunity for you ever to process the feelings that come up in the context of our relationships with our parents. We just have to push them down. But we're constantly pushing down our feelings in order to, just get through our days. And then we come to this attitude of service and we begin to interact with people. And what we discover, or the thing we're going to bump into, the shell that we made to protect us from feeling anything. Because the risk of feeling really good, the risk that in the effort that we make to feel really good, we will end up feeling really bad, is too great for most people to bear. So, but underneath every hurt feeling, every pain, is energy, and that energy is never negative, it is always positive, and that energy is nourishment and transformation for us. It's interesting I read a piece the other day about the brain, and the author was saying the brain doesn't function like a computer at all. It isn't digital in any way, and it stores nothing. The brain stores nothing. Experience literally changes the brain. Literally. Brain is changed by experience. And so, we are not an accumulation of information and lessons. There are no lessons. There is transformation. And that transformation, the quality of the transformation that each of us goes through as we pass through this life is, really dependent upon the degree to which we hold a simple, clear intention which we are acting out on a daily basis. In the process of acting out this intention, we will have experiences that will, that come along with feelings. And how we deal with our feelings, is exactly how we will be transformed. How our brains will be transformed, what we will become as we move through this world. So it's really important to, and all the Tibetan and many of the Indian scriptures, they will say it's really important to hold a deep, intense, almost tearful longing for growth, for knowledge, for compassion, for wisdom. To hold a very intense, pure feeling is the pathway to the experience of ourselves beyond this body and mind. To see ourselves as patterns of energy, and to be able to awaken those energies and, stimulate them to the full expression of their creative potential. This is spiritual work, and it is service, a real attitude of service that is the pathway, one of the foundations of this whole process. An attitude of service anchors our spiritual life in our material world.